All right, guys. So for today, I wanted to cover this story that I found in the Wall Street Journal titled To Shrink Learning Gap, This District Offers Classes Separated by Race, which I thought was kind of interesting. And it goes on to say a high school in Evanston offers so called affinity classes. This is a new form of classes that they're titling it as, in which Black and Latino students are separated from white students. Now, I did a little bit more digging on this. I found out that News Nation also covered this. Illinois high school offers classes separated by race, and I found that they actually have a video on this. So I figured, why don't we all watch it together and see how kind of ridiculous this is, I guess.
High school has expanded a program to address its learning gap, and it lets students voluntarily segregate by race.
The classes started back in 2019. Advocates say they can make students feel more comfortable and perform better at school. Emily Finn is joining us right now to explain. Emily.
Well, Adrian, good morning. This is certainly an interesting one, sparking some debate. It is a voluntary segregation program that's being implemented at a high school right outside of our News Nation Chicago studio in Evanston, Illinois. The program has
Chicago is the gift that just keeps on giving. I know we said a little bit out of Chicago, but still, like, oh
actually
boy.
expanded in recent years. This year at Evanston Township High School, almost 200 Black and Latino students signed up for core classes like math and writing for students of the same race. The so-called affinity classes are taught by a teacher of color and are intended to help Black and Latino students enroll in advanced curriculum. The school district superintendent told the high school's student newspaper the goal is to provide, quote, a different, more familiar setting to kids who feel really anxious about being in AP classes. While federal anti-discrimination laws ban public schools from mandatory segregation, education lawyers say the voluntary options don't apply.
Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds? They say a more comfortable environment to learn in AP classes. So are white people making these kids uncomfortable? And then when they're saying that this is a voluntary segregation because they can't make it mandatory, what would be said if this was the other way around? What if there was 200 white students or more that decided that they wanted this program to exist where they could segregate themselves from Black and Latino kids because they felt uncomfortable or unsafe in those classrooms? That would not fly. Yet they're allowing it to happen for Black and Hispanic kids to segregate from white kids. And either way, I think it also includes Asians as well, but they keep emphasizing white in this. But again, why do you have this only catered to the Black and Hispanic kids? By this, it sounds like the white kids have no option. Now the white kids either have to be in a class with Black and Hispanic kids who are comfortable with having them, or they are just automatically segregated into an all white or white and Asian class because those Black and Hispanic kids don't feel safe around them. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Evanston isn't the first school to try this. Actually, schools in Minnesota, California, and Washington State also offer elective
Of
classes
course
that
they
are race
do.
specific. Civil rights attorney Robert Patillo argues the program in Evanston is healthy and enriching for students and can even make learning feel more comfortable.
You have to be able to balance both the educational aspects of it with the social educational aspects and bringing more children together and not trying to separate them out and specifically not.
But that's exactly what you're doing by giving them this option. You are separating them out. If they're all in the same class together, then they all have the same educational and social environment to learn from. Segregating them is doing exactly the opposite of what you're talking about separating them. What?
And bringing more children together and not trying to separate them out and specifically not preaching division and superiority or inferiority that we also often have saw previously, where you're saying that one group is just racially or religiously or ethnically superior or better to other groups. We're all equal, we're all the same, but we're just learning in different ways, and that does not make us different. It just simply means that these are the methodologies that are best for these particular groups.
But not everyone agrees with Patillo's assessment. Nationwide, fewer Black and Latino students enroll in advanced placement courses than white students, and oftentimes do score lower on standardized tests. But the director of the National Education Policy Center, Kevin Wellner, says that he believes the segregated classes in high schools are simply a short-term solution to the racial inequalities
Well,
he
no
says
duh.
minorities face in society as a whole.
We kind of covered this with the whole Oregon State, where a lot of the Oregon high schools, they don't allow standardized, well, they do standardized testing still, but they don't take the results and push them through to see if these kids are suitable to pass or not, or get into the, real world, simply because black students or people or students of color score a little bit lower or are scoring lower than the white and the Asian students of that school. That's not the solution. The solution is to either provide more educational support, whether that's extra tutoring, maybe, extra classes, or a little bit more time on certain assignments, stuff like that. But simply segregating them, it's like a band-aid to the solution. Because if they said that this has been going on from 2019, they should have maybe some substantial data, I would assume, from then to now to say whether this has been working, you know?
The school district seems to be trying to respond to the resulting harm of larger inequities in the
Okay.
community, in the state and society by applying, a Band-Aid in the form of these voluntarily segregated affinity classes. And I see that as unfortunate, as an unfortunate Band-Aid that attempts to address those larger problems.
As we mentioned, the Evanston High School isn't the only school across the U.S. that's implementing similar programs. Other school districts around the nation will be closely watching what does happen in Evanston and what the impact is on students, test scores, and the districts. Adrienne and Markey.
And it looks like there's not actually an answer as to whether this is beneficial yet.
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation.
Yeah, as one could assume, there probably isn't really much substantial data to prove that this is a good idea. Oh, and what's interesting is there's actually another clip from News Nation that covered this, where they talked to a former educator there who went in and talked to the students himself and found this out.
The strategy they've seized upon is, I think, a flawed strategy. When I visited the school several years ago, I asked them, can I talk to a group of high-achieving Black students? Because I'd like to learn about their experience at the school. So they arranged for that. And I asked them about their experiences. Then I said, what's your favorite class? And they all said it was calculus. I said, really? Calculus? I said, why calculus? Turned out they all had the same teacher. And they described a teacher who was passionate about teaching, who was good at building relationships, and who was so good at teaching math that every one of them was going to go off and major in a math or science related field in college. So I went and visited the class. And then I told the superintendent, I said, here's the solution to your problem. You need more teachers who can do what he does. You don't have to segregate the kids. What you need is teachers who know how to reach kids of all kinds. What they've done is instead of focusing on the teachers, they're focusing on the kids, not realizing that when you separate kids like this, you also reinforce stigma, which is what the opposite of what you're trying to do.
So there you can see, yes, you could say it's anecdotal. Maybe it's just those few students or those high achieving students, but they emphasize that it's the teachers that are helping them get interested in learning or sticking with a class or a program. And even in another article that talks about this whole situation, it says an internal study showed improved attendance for Black boys in the program in 2017, and average GPAs of 2.27, compared with 2.14 for Black males district-wide. So there's a slight increase there, but it goes on to then say, note that the difference in the GPAs associated with voluntary segregation is minimal, only 0.13 points or about 6%. But there's another possible reason for that. Suppose that professors grade on the curve, or on average, minority teachers tend to grade their minority students higher than do teachers that are race incompatible, meaning not Black teachers. In that case, we'd get higher GPAs in the segregated classes than the integrated classes. No, the only way to really test if voluntary segregation improves performance is to use what? Standardized tests as controls. Tests in which everybody has to answer the same question. If this kind of segregation works, we should see higher test scores on minority students if they've been in self-segregated classes, which is 100% true. Sure, maybe these kids have, whatever you want to call it, performance anxiety. They don't like maybe putting their hand up and answering when there's white or Asian students around because if they get the wrong answer, they might look dumb or whatever. Okay, then you put them in this segregated class and you're still teaching them the same curriculum that the white and the Asian students are learning, or specifically just the white students. Well, then you give them still the standardized test and you see how much more they've improved to see if this is even worth it. If not, this is just a ridiculous idea to voluntarily segregate children simply because they're black and Latino. But I mean, this is all just my opinions on these things. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'll leave the link for this video and the article in the description below. Let me know what you think about this, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.